Hi, my name is Thomas from the Main Character Cast podcast, here today to do a quick review of an anime that I recently watched. It's a little bit older, but I watched it recently and really enjoyed it. It's called Haibane Renmei. This show is effectively about a group of, they're known as Haibane, but angel-like creatures who exist or are born into this world to exist in this kind of, it's an older seeming world, think early 20th century appearing. It's a human town, everyone's human except for these Haibane, these angel-like creatures. And this town is surrounded by just these enormous walls, where only a select few of the townsfolk, known as kind of like this religious sect that call themselves the Toga, and only they may enter and leave the town and the walled area of the town. The story itself follows one particular Haibane, whose name is Raka. She's newly born at the beginning of the show. The birthing of a Haibane is basically the hatching from an egg after awakening from a dream, which is kind of an interesting thing. But they awaken seemingly with a past life, but no concrete memories of what their life used to be. And they wake up from the dream, and then they're named after what the dream was about. And that's kind of defines them in terms of naming, and it has a little bit more significance later in the show. But what really makes the show interesting is that you got this mysterious world that they establish with these very strange physical mysteries, but there's also a large amount of sort of introspective, more philosophical mysteries about, well, what is the actual reason why they're in this town? Why were they born into this town? What are they supposed to do in this new world? How do they escape it? Do they accept it? What happens? And it's all told in this sort of story style, which is very slow-paced, very focusing on the everyday slice of life type of activities that these Haibane get up to and how they interact with the townspeople. So in terms of characters, again, the main character is Raka. She's struggling to fit in, find her new place in this kind of new, strange world. So she's the relatable character. She's the fish out of water, who you're kind of following, learning as she learns, and rooting for, just because, just like her, you have no idea what's going on, so go Raka. So she's adjusting to these new surroundings and these new rules about her society. She can't leave town because it's banned, only the Toga may. Who are the Toga? It's very interesting type of mysteries that she's going through. On the other hand, there's a larger cast of Haibane, which is kind of the family that she's born into that takes care of her, follows her, teaches her about the world, as well as they know it. Not that they have all the answers themselves, but they also try to work with her to sort of figure things out. But the main character, other character I want to mention is Reki, who is her sort of the maternal figure for Raka, who serves as kind of her primary teacher in that family type Haibane Renmei setting. But as we slowly find out, though, Reki is not the perfect mentor. She also has her own fair of struggles and has her own questioning and uncertainty about the world, which I guess wouldn't necessarily make her a bad mentor, but makes her actually a little bit more relatable and is able to relate better to Raka as well, which I think works out well in terms of story pacing. And like I said, the other characters are just the other Haibane. Not to get too much into them, they all have kind of a thing about them. There's the tomboyish, energetic character, there's a younger, kind of more naive character, and it's all really interesting how they interact with each other and interact with the townsfolk, which really pulls the story along for me, especially in the beginning, where you're kind of thrown into this really slow-paced story with a very ambiguous world. They kind of help you get past that initial ambiguity, which really works, I thought, pretty well for the telling of the story. Okay, in terms of art, the character designs are very unique. They portray the characters very well, I believe, just based on facial expressions, mannerisms, how they move. The backgrounds, however, are pretty hit or miss. Sometimes they're pretty great. Sometimes the backgrounds are very beautiful, kind of almost like an oil painting aesthetic of a kind of a barren, empty, mysterious world. Very subdued earth tones, a little bit darker though. A lot of brown, but it's very beautiful when it works, but when it doesn't, it looks horrendous. I'll try to post a few examples of what I'm talking about, but it's when it looks bad, it looks very flat. It looks very ugly. And I see what they're trying to do, but sometimes it just doesn't work. When the scene is too busy, if there's too much going on in that scene, your eyes just sort of glaze over it, and it's just a kind of a brown, muddy mess, which is very not great, especially when you see how beautiful they sometimes are able to capture the world. So that's kind of that. Good characters, sometimes not so great world in terms of art. And then music, nothing to write home about. It's all very soft, atmospheric, a lot of piano-heavy pieces. Nothing really jumped out at me, especially in terms of the piano. The ED and opening and ending were also very good, but not something not something I've gone back to since watching the show. Not something I would expect a lot of people necessarily would. They fit the mood of the show well, but as standalone songs, they're just okay. One note I did want to make, though, is that the opening song of the show is called Freebird, and clearly that should be the ending song, right? Freebird. You should play Freebird at the end. Get it? Leonard Skinner. It's funny. It's funny. If you either know or you don't, or you could look it up. So, yeah. Anyway, overall thoughts: good slice of life tone, slow paced show, foreign world, layered and really interesting mysteries, both sort of the more tangible and the more philosophical. Specifically, when I think about this show, into the philosophical struggle, is to give an example, there's a lot about this idea of sort of being sin-bound, kind of trapped in your own head and your own problems, I suppose. I don't want to get too much into it, but think of just like a brain paradox where you can say, oh, nobody likes me. And if somebody does like you, well, nobody reasonable would like me, therefore, if they like me, they must be an idiot. So you kind of trap yourself in a paradox where either nobody likes me or they're too stupid to realize that I am worthless. Anxiety ensues, paradox ensues. It's stuff like that, but in this show it's a little bit more tangible. It has, when you're trapped in these things, it has a physical effect on your body too, which kind of really makes you want to get to the root of what's going on in your own head, which is interesting. So, come for the mystery, both the physical and kind of that weird philosophical stuff too. It's really great. And you should stay for the great characters that are happening in the show. My biggest complaint with this show, aside from the sometimes not so great art, is that the characters kind of feel like they get dropped off in the second half of the show. Raka and Riki, are the main characters throughout, but all the side characters seem to kind of fall to the side towards the end, and I don't really like that. They kind of had to push them out of the way to get more mysteries in there and solve more mysteries and explain things and introspect things. I see what they did, but I liked the characters so much that it kind of threw me when they weren't as many playing a big part in the story. So, I think the show was interesting. I think it's intriguing. I think it's thought-provoking. I think it's artistically interesting, whether that's a hit or a miss at certain points in the show. And I would definitely recommend this show to anyone who has the patience, I guess, for a slower-paced show. I think there's enough going on here that it'll pull you through once you get into it. After a couple episodes, you'll really want to watch till the end. But it takes a commitment. If you just watch one episode, you might just lose patience with it immediately. For some people, some people prefer their action shows, your Cowboy Bebops and Wooly Cooley, which are great too. Maybe Cowboy Bebop's a bad example of a high action show, 100% of the time, but Wooly Cooley, things like that, where it's high action all the time. Obviously, this show is much slower. It's makes you think a little bit more to get the most out of it, I would say. But it's enjoyable enough if you can get past that. So definitely would recommend to anyone who it sounds interesting to, because it is interesting. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the show real quick. So thank you all for watching. Again, my name is Thomas from the Main Character Cast. Check us out on www.maincharactercast.com. Drop a comment here if you have your own opinions on the show. And check the box below. I think I'll have a link to the website as well in our latest episode of the podcast and the episode where I originally reviewed this. But I just wanted to also kind of do a side video review to expand a little bit on my thoughts and enunciate my feelings. So, thanks for watching. Have a great day.